June the 5th, 2024. Guys, you're looking at X-ray flux chart for the last 3 days. Notice it starts with June the 3rd, right there. We haven't had any X flares. But before that, as this giant sunspot had returned and started getting closer to where we could identify it, it started slowing down from the X flares, and now we're dealing with the M flare situation here, and a few each day. And so it's just adding up the number of sunspots this year. But it's also building up heat in our atmosphere. It's not throwing any CMEs out right now. They're not tracking anything that's Earth directed. But when you have those bursts of even the X flares from a few days ago, and that you see the radio blackout here on Earth, that is heat. It's photon energy, not proton. Photon light energy, and that is heat, and our atmosphere is heating. And today we're going to break records in the West. I know it's summer before anybody says that in the comments. I realize that. I've been around a long time. But last summer was the worst I've ever seen, and central Mississippi gets very hot and very humid. So I've seen some bad times, and I've been in the desert in Arizona in the summer, and that's rough. That's a furnace, even without the humidity. But what I experienced last year was scary to me, because I'm trying to deal with a lot of animals and keep them cool, and I was dealing with back surgery, and it was really tough, and had some power outages. It was just a nightmare situation, and it's made me dread the heat peak this year, just like the first big hurricane that I was in, which was Hurricane Betsy in 64-65 hurricane season. I was down in Buras, Louisiana. I watched them since I was 4th grade, by the way. I haven't missed one hurricane since then as far as tracking them. The levee washed out in sections down in the lower Mississippi River where Buras is, and a lot of flooding went down. Anyway, what we're dealing with now, and we're going to possibly be going back into a terrible hurricane season, is heat. I can't help but continue to refer to the book of Revelations. That fourth angel pouring out that vial upon the sun, or bowl out on the sun, and it scorches men. That's what we're seeing. And again, don't say it's summer. This, I know it is. But when you have things that make it worse, you pay attention to. And remember, if you believe in the generation of the fig tree, the last generation that shall not pass before they see these things, look at the political situation. Look at the wars and rumors of wars. Look at the natural environment caused by the sun. Every bit of Earth's weather is caused by solar weather, space weather. That's how we get our weather. Anyway, we haven't had X flares, but these are heating the atmosphere, and there's a lot of them. Notice right here in 3 days, over the, not counting the C flares, just the M's. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, easily 7. A couple of that match that in 3 days. That's a lot of solar flares when you add that up over the year's time. They're continuing to heat our atmosphere even without the CMEs. This burst from these flares does that. Let's look at the temperature chart itself. Now, this is a real-time solar wind charts, and it is also a 3-day chart, just like the one we saw. Notice it goes from 0 to 12 3 times here, the last 3 days. In the purple, that's solar wind speed in kilometers per second. It averages, and this is a very normal line right through here, just over 300 kilometers per second. Not 350, but around 315, 320, right in there. If it was just a steady wind stream with nothing adding to it, that's where it would be. But we started seeing this yesterday as the temperature started picking up. The solar wind picked up, and the density was affected also. But right here, yesterday, we started seeing an increase in the solar wind speed. Here we had some peaks, guys, that got on up there. And when you start getting up like we are today, 478 approaching, if you roll it through there, 79 approaching 500 kilometers per second, you know, you're approaching 1,000,000 miles. And this thing is pulsing when you see these things. Now, this is heating the atmosphere, those steady stream of the M flares. And right now is the worst time of the year for that to happen. We're going into the heating. We're going into hurricane season. So last year we had pretty rough. We didn't have the major landfalling hurricanes except for one. And that exacerbated the heat factor here, especially in the south, in the coastal states. It was hot everywhere, but the Atlantic states that usually are affected by the hurricanes or tropical storms, that's a cooling natural process for our planet. If not for hurricanes and tropical storms, we would overheat very quickly. It's just part of the water deal getting hot, land getting hot, steam rising, getting into the upper atmosphere. And our winds are about to change from left to right, coming from the Atlantic side. Again, I know it was rough last year, but we're going to have landfalling hurricanes, which may be a blessing in a way because it temporarily relieves some heat, but it makes it very humid afterwards during the middle of the summer. And if you have your power outages, then that makes it really bad. Like I said, last summer, this time in June, was when I had back surgery. And I'm not harping on that, but I'm saying when power went out twice because storms knocked out tree limbs and one giant pine tree took out the entire power line just down in front of our home here, then the solar panels, things like that, guys, really came in handy. But you still have to be dealing with other things, water, right? And someone asked in the video 2 videos ago, I don't remember your name, but it struck my attention, that what was it you said, BP, what is the name of the fans that run on batteries and you can run on your solar panels too if you have a way to charge them? And it's, guys, Home Depot has the Ryobi fans. They have them starting at $49 that runs on a battery. And I keep mine charged from my solar panels that I've had for years. But they also have one that's larger than that. This one I'm talking about is about a 14-inch. I'm not sidetracking much, and I don't make any money from Ryobi or Home Depot. But I do like to help people. And a lot of people either have bought wood heaters or fans or other things that we've talked about. And I'll put a link to those at the end of this video. I think it's important, and I appreciate you asking the question and reminding me to talk about it. But they start at $49. This thing's about 12 or 14 inches, and it sets on a bucket of water if you want it to. And it has a little tube that drops in there and 2 misters on the side that blow a fine mist out on you. You could drop ice down in there with that water, and it would be like an air conditioner. Now, that's strictly battery operated, so you would want maybe 2 or 3 or get a 4 battery pack with a multi-charger, and because you can use those for so many other things. But then you get up into like a 20-inch that is battery powered and has a wall plug. So you don't have to run your batteries all the time, but you can use it as a regular fan. But the power goes out, you can pop one of the big Ryobi batteries in, just like that goes in your drills, and you've got a 4-speed fan that is super. I mean, it's the way it's designed, it's real wide, real quiet, and throws a lot of air out. These are life-saving things. That's why I'm talking about that. Now, back to this video. I'm sorry about that, guys. The one thing that is exactly the opposite on the chart most of the time is the density, how thick the proton density is in the waves of energy that are coming from the sun. You have that coming all the time. The thicker they are, the greater your chances of geomagnetic storms, auroras, things like that. Not very powerful, but the greater the chances, and the heating of the upper atmosphere. So with the speed and the temperature rising, at least the density slows down. Notice these charts are reversed. And I've said it before, it's like a smoke on the fire. You don't have any wind, smoke's very thick, kind of run you away from the fire. A little wind, that wind separates the smoke particles and blows them away. It's not as dense. So as the solar wind picks up, the density slows down, and I think that's a balance also to keep the upper atmosphere from overheating. It's not just the upper atmosphere, though. Remember the video I showed you about the ground currents, and as the energy is absorbed by our shields, it is absorbed into the ground because of our magnetic lines of force, and they go through the earth, and that's why your compass works. But that heats the earth. They measure it in ground currents all over the planet. So the ground's heating up. You've got, especially in the northern hemisphere and upper northern hemisphere, and the oceans are too hot. Now let's check out AccuWeather for a moment. And again, I know it's summer. It says the first heat wave of the season for western U.S. to increase wildfire danger. But guys, this heat wave, we're going to look at some of the other information, is going to bring record-breaking temperatures for this date to places like Phoenix and Las Vegas. Record-breaking. Okay, it's not just a normal summer. Those days are over. Phoenix and Las Vegas are among the cities that will experience blazing heat in the west this week. Today, guys, is when the record-breaking temperatures start. And the widespread hot and dry conditions escalate the wildfire threat across the region. And guys, this heat wave is going to spread just like the rest of the weather. And it's got about half of the U.S. in it. We're going to look at a map. It's going to move to the east side from the center, to the east side on us. And we know that California, Washington, Oregon, and Canada, Colorado, New Mexico, you have a lot of wildfires. Texas, too. It's been getting worse. But for everyone that experienced the drought last year and you had pine trees and other trees, we lost 150 in our yard here, and from the pine beetle infestation, they had to be cut or they would have fell, and it happened very quickly. And within months, 70 feet tall pines turned brown. So that wildfire warning, you pay very close attention to it. We had to cut that many. The power company cut some on the power line that cuts through a section of our land, and then we cut about 50 here, and to keep from it crushing our home, killing us. We had no choice. I built this cabin, and it was a cabin to start with 25 years ago. Now it's expanded into a home. And so I built it in the trees just like one of the big national parks because that's how I like it. But the pine beetles changed that. But one thing I've noticed, there's always a silver lining, is we were very careful not to damage any of the hardwoods that went there. We had to cut these trees and move them back away from the house. And they're really doing good because we're extra wet this year, and so they're taking the place of a lot of the shade, not everywhere, but they're doing good. But guys, we got to remember that all of those trees and throughout this region of the nation have not been cut yet. They couldn't get to them. It's impossible. First, they're getting off the power lines, and then you're kind of responsible for your stuff. And I know that it was not easy getting these down. Now, if I hadn't had a couple of very good friends, I don't know if I could have done it. And we still had to rent equipment and stuff like that, a lift to get up to take these tops out of these trees. They were dead. Bark was falling off of the sides of them that quick. And we went through several storms. As a matter of fact, the night before last, I mentioned in the video yesterday that the backyard was covered in big limbs, and some of them are 6 inches wide or thick and can be used for firewood. I cut the bigger ones yesterday before it got hot. I haven't moved them yet, but I got them away from the house. And you're going to be dealing with that, guys, the storms, the heat, and if you're near a big forest of these dead trees, that's fuel. Just think about it. Be aware of your surroundings. It says the first widespread heat wave for the western U.S. is building and will last through the end of the week. They warn that the heat and dryness will boost again the wildfires in some situations. The combination of a bulge in the jet stream, high pressure building at most levels of the atmosphere, and storms offshore of California will allow the heat to build without any shower or thunderstorm activity for about 50 million people in the West through at least tomorrow. Now, this is the area I'm talking about, and like I said, this is much of the West, and it's just going to be moving over into Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas all the way across until it reaches here, Florida, and up the East Coast, just in time for the hurricane season to get a little rougher. But it says highs 10 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit above historical averages. Records challenged elevated wildfire. Here's the jet stream. It's up here. The high pressure's got it circling well above us. But notice it dips down, and that's why we're seeing some problems with the hurricanes being pushed back, coming out of the Caribbean, up across the islands and back into the Atlantic. That jet stream right there. And one stopped on us last year, guys, for, 2 or 3 months, and it was miserable. But it's going to be worse this year. The National Weather Service defines a heat wave as a period of abnormally hot weather with or without high humidity, lasting more than 2 days. Heat waves can be dangerous, especially for those who cannot take a break in a cool environment. Experts urge people to take it easy and keep hydrated as the heat wave builds. Guys, do not forget about your pets. Extra water, bring them into the air conditioner. They get a little mud on the floor or dust, you can clean that up, save their life. The AccuWeather real feel temps will surge along with the heat in the west, and will be dangerously high all the way as far as North Carolina. Again, this is starting today, but this is for tomorrow. And that 2 days is what they're talking about. And why? Because the nights don't have time to cool off and the heat just intensifies, right? But you're talking about in the dark reds, 110 to 115 degrees. This is temperature, real feel, in Fahrenheit. Then it goes from 105 into your lighter red to 110, and down the scale 95 to 100, all the way up into Salt Lake City area. See this? And this is going to end up down into past Houston and into Louisiana. Like I said, it's moving to the east, guys. And this is bad news for what I've been dreading, and most of you have also. High temperature records to be set already. It says not only will it get hot across much of the interior west, but daily temperature records will also be challenged. In Fresno, California, temps are projected to be around 105 from Wednesday to Friday, within a few degrees of record highs dating back, guys, to 1903. Over 100 years. Think about that. Now, this is called the Heat Wave Severity Index. It goes back 3 years. Your yellow or gold is moderate, strong is orange, severe is in the red. In 2022, starting June the 25th to the 27th is when it began. At the end of this month, there was that 2 days. There was 36 cases of severity index. Last year, now, it didn't begin until July the 15th. There were 6 and then 5 in August, total of 11. But it was so intense that the year before that was better, I promise you. Now here, this is the earliest start in 3 years, June the 5th through the 7th. Total 3. But this is the wide, big spread one. There's been some heat indexes that were concerning in a few areas. Nothing that concerned 50 million people, folks. Now let's look at the records for June the 6th. Back in 2016, 111. They're expecting tomorrow for this heat that's there now to continue overnight. You know how hot it gets there when it doesn't cool off at night. 112, guys. Vegas could go from 110. Record set 2010 to 111. Now this goes through tomorrow, but Phoenix, you're talking about breaking records from 2016 at 112. Las Vegas breaking a 2010 record of 110 to 111. Madeira, you're going to be close to breaking a record from 1928. You're not going to quite get there according to this. Same in Fresno, just 2 degrees lower than 1903 records. Elko, you're going to be 1 degree above the record set for this date in 2006. And it says east of the Sierra Nevada, highs in the mid to upper 90s will also challenge records in Reno. And one of the most concerning things, again, guys, is the wildfire risks. This is through tomorrow. You see here it's kind of faded, but it's Edmonton and up into Canada. And you can see the red area or orange area just to the north of there. And that's where we saw a lot of wildfire smoke come through that area down into the U.S. last year. Up in Billings, Redding, San Francisco, you have some risk. But when you go to orange and red, like where they're saying here in northern Arizona and New Mexico, you're getting into a moderate to a high risk factor. Even Florida, look at this. You're covered in either some risk are a moderate risk of wildfire, heat, dryness, possibilities of this occurring through tomorrow. And so, like I said, we're dealing with really, in the south, a triple punch of heat, wildfire threats, and tropical threats. But we were told the oceans will be raging. And this tells the story pretty much right here, guys, is drought monitor. This is the latest, and I think it comes out once a week or so. But this is why Florida's in trouble, the drought. We don't have much of it here. We've got rain. It's wet as it can be outside right now. But you can see the spots. A lot of South Texas, all of New Mexico, much of Arizona here, going over into sections of California. And in here they're talking about Nevada, Denver, near Memphis, just west of the Mississippi River there, all through here, up to Seattle, Billings, Minneapolis, Chicago, and then there's a small hot spots through here. You guys know where they're at, and more than likely, because of this, you've had some dry tree problems. So again, that's fuel to the fire. And really, I should add to the triple threat subject, make it 4, because here they're pointing out on AccuWeather again that this intense heat zones, this high pressure, they're like an oven, guys. They set over an area and bake it. They also are called ring of fires, not just the volcanoes around the Pacific Ocean. But they call this circle that the meteorologists call ring of fire is where you have the most intense and dangerous possibilities of severe thunderstorms. So once that moves from this area over to the humidity coming from both the Gulf and the Atlantic on the lower levels, then what are we going to see? An intensification of tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, and windstorms. Guys, I know it's not a lot of good news, but this is a warning that everyone needs to pay attention to. And we are moving into those times, so don't expect that, I don't expect that the summers to lighten up much. I think the intensity is going to continue, and people are going to start getting their attention moved from the things that really don't matter to the things that do matter, if you know what I mean. When they realize that this is something that you cannot control, you can only deal with. And that's what we are facing now, guys. Again, I'll put the link to those battery-powered fans, or you can just go to Home Depot's, the best prices, and type in battery fans. And like I said, you can get them with the batteries or the larger ones that run on both. It's a heads up, guys. Be safe.